Welcome. Act 1, Scene 1 of the unfolding drama that became the United States of America took place on this day in 1607. We're going to be talking about the beginning of this great nation. But right now, up to 75 million Americans are facing the threat of severe weather today, with tornadoes and severe storms pounding the country from the East Coast through the South.
The brutal storms have already killed around 30 people in just 2 days, and it's not over yet. Heather Sells has the story.
Overnight, more deadly tornadoes swept through the South. In Tupelo, Mississippi, one struck downtown.
To see trees twisted and snapped like what they are now, it's nothing I've ever seen in my life, and it's nothing I ever want to see again.
The hardest hit areas so far, Mississippi and Arkansas.
It's where I grew up. All of these houses are my family's houses, and they're gone.
Authorities say the death toll could have been worse if people had not taken shelter after listening to forecasts and getting cell phone alerts.
We got alerts 20 minutes before it happened that we needed to do something, but being stubborn and bullheaded, I didn't react until 5 minutes before it happened.
Tim Lee was huddled in his home with his family when he realized the front door was open. As he went to close it, he witnessed the powerful tornado that would carve out an 80-mile path of destruction through suburban Little Rock.
You saw nothing but chaos, stuff being thrown across the yard, just wild. And I locked the door, ran back to the bathroom, and then it was like a roaring freight train for 20 or 30 seconds. And then after that, it was calm.
A tornado also struck nearby Valonia, ripping this bell from the local Methodist church and tossing it 75 yards.
A steel girder encrusted in cement that was completely ripped out of the ground and twisted.
Forecasters say the violent thunderstorms and tornadoes aren't over yet. They're expected to threaten millions of lives in many central, southern, and mid-Atlantic states between now and Thursday. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Terrible storms just south of us in North Carolina. We didn't mention that in that story, but down in Tupelo, our command center for Operation Blessing is on the way to Mississippi. If it's not already there, they're setting up the necessary equipment to feed people, to help rebuild houses, to take branches and limbs out of the way, and to bring some kind of normalcy back to those people. Terrible, absolutely terrible what's happening. It's amazing. We just had a story in the news that said the start of tornado season has been relatively benign, and then bang, it hit right across the country in very, very severe weather. Well, in other news, Secretary of State John Kerry is trying to calm a political storm that he created himself. John Jessup has that story from Washington. Here's John.
Pat, Secretary of State Kerry is backing off his remarks about Israel, saying it could become a potential apartheid state if it doesn't reach a peace deal with the Palestinians. Both Republicans and Democrats, along with Jewish leaders, blasted Kerry, pointing out the rights that Palestinians have in Israel compared to the treatment of blacks under apartheid in South Africa. Kerry's remarks were first reported by the Daily Beast website. Although Kerry says he chose the wrong word, he did not apologize for the comment and says he's committed to Israel. 683 people have been sentenced to death in Egypt's latest mass trial against supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood. Among those sentenced is Mohammed Badi, the Brotherhood's spiritual guide. The trials have drawn international condemnation. Human rights groups say there's no way the defendants are getting a fair trial. However, the same judge also reduced most of the death sentences of 529 defendants in a similar case in March, sentencing the majority of them to life imprisonment. The same court will hold another session on June 21st to issue the final verdicts. A possible link between high doses of antidepressants and suicidal behavior in young people when those high doses are given early in treatment. That's the finding from a new study published in the Journal of American Medical Association. Teens and young adults who started their treatment with higher than recommended doses were twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts or try to hurt themselves, especially in the first 3 months. You can find out more about this study by going to cbnnews.com. Well, Wednesday marks an historic day in American history, the anniversary of the first time an American president took the oath of office. And an event honoring George Washington is also bringing together big names in politics and the evangelical community and a national celebration of prayer.
Since our founding in 1776, the United States has only known 44 presidents, from Barack Obama to George Washington. And arguably, few have had a more lasting impact than the country's first, a Revolutionary War hero who served as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army and a man who's revered as the father of the nation.
All over the Capitol, George Washington's legacy is apparent in monuments and statues. The city's even his namesake. But for the organizer of an upcoming event honoring the country's first president, Washington was more than a founding father. He set many precedents, none more important, he says, than a public profession of faith in a divine God.
After being sworn in there at Federal Hall, he placed his hand upon an open Bible and he pledged an oath before God and the nation to uphold the Constitution.
George Washington, immediately after he took the oath of office under the Constitution, leaned down, picked up his Bible, and kissed the Bible. From there, he invited his vice president, his cabinet to follow him.
They walked down the street to St. Paul's Chapel, where they had divine services, and there in that service, America was dedicated to God.
This year marks the 225th anniversary of Washington's first inauguration, which will be commemorated by a prayer event in the U.S. Capitol. Minnesota Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann is this year's congressional host.
It's an overlooked day, but we are not going to overlook it. This is a seminal moment, and we as members of Congress are inviting the nation to come back and remember this very great man, more importantly, what he did. He dedicated our nation to the glory of God.
Now, in its third year, Washington, a man of prayer, brings together members of the House and Senate to pray for the nation and its leaders. CBN News interviewed the event's founder at Washington's historic Mount Vernon home.
And it is our hopes and desires that having this event, Washington, a Man of Prayer, on May 7th, will bring attention to the fact that not only was our nation founded upon the principles of God's Word, but it was also a moment for all men around the world, because for the last 225 years, men from all nations, all creeds, all colors have desired to come to America.
The event, emceed by former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee, is only for members of Congress. But this year, the prayer will be beamed into homes and churches on the Daystar television network. It will also be available on a live webcast, inviting Americans to join with the prayers of their leaders for America to return to its Christian heritage.
700 million homes have access to their viewing, and we are just trusting God that He will allow the world to see members of the Senate, members of the House, noted Christian leaders acknowledge George Washington as a man of faith, a man of prayer.
And you can watch Washington, a Man of Prayer. It will air next Wednesday, May 7th from 8:30 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time on the Daystar Television Network. And you can see it online at cbn.com. Pat, Washington had a lasting legacy.
Well, he did indeed, and he picked off the day that we're celebrating today, which is the 29th. And we're going to talk about that. This is the day that this country was founded, and it took place. If Washington was inaugurated in 1789 or whatever it was, this took place in 1607, so it's a whole lot earlier, and that's when the nation started, and we're going to talk about that.
Welcome back to Washington for this CBN News break. The Nigerian government is promising to find the nearly 200 girls reportedly abducted by the Muslim terrorist group Boko Haram. The group hasn't taken responsibility, but most blame Boko Haram for kidnapping about 230 teens from a school located in Borno State. Around 40 girls managed to escape. A group of security chiefs, state governors, and religious leaders recently met to discuss how to find the others. The Nigerian president calls it the most pressing security issue facing his country. The post of U.S. Ambassador for International Religious Freedom is still empty 6 months after Dr. Suzanne Johnson Cook resigned. President Obama said he's looking forward to nominating a replacement, but that was back in February. A State Department spokeswoman recently said she's had no update on a replacement. She added the vacancy does not reflect a lack of concern by the administration for religious freedom around the world. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.